This is an On the Ice and Behind the Benches podcast on the Sports for Beginners podcast feed.
CNT Radio will never give you up. They will never let you down. Nor will they run around or desert you. So join Nick Astley for The Melting Pot every Saturday on CNT Radio. Hang on a minute. He's not Nick Astley. Oh, jings, I've done it wrong. Anyway, just join Nick for The Melting Pot on CNT Radio.
A split back-to-back between the Montreal Canadiens and the New Jersey Devils and Sheldon Keefe. Now the Maple Leafs play home for a couple of games, and it starts on Hockey Night in Canada with the Pittsburgh Penguins and Mike Sullivan. So who won this matchup? Is the Maple Leafs 2-1 on the season, or are the Penguins 2-1 on the season? Let's all find out on today's edition of Maple Leafs Post Recap. Hockey Night in Canada edition. Start the show. It's a hockey night in Toronto, as the great Mike Lang would always say when it's a hockey night in Pittsburgh. And speaking of the great Mike Lang of the Pittsburgh Penguins, let's get you all caught up to speed and welcome you into Maple Leafs Post Recap, a Hockey Night in Canada edition, which features two teams who both won a game and lost a game. For the Toronto Maple Leafs, they won a game against the New Jersey Devils and former head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Sheldon Keefe, 4-2 on Thursday night, just a night ago from Friday. After losing by only one goal in the Montreal Canadiens opener and the season opener for the Toronto Maple Leafs, 1-0, the goal by Cole Caulfield on the power play for the Montreal Canadiens. Meanwhile, on the other hand, the Pittsburgh Penguins striked back after losing an embarrassing opener on the Pittsburgh Penguins opener 6-0 to the New York Rangers, who absolutely hammered the Pittsburgh Penguins. However, they would bounce back with a 6-3 victory over the Little Caesars Arena opener of the Detroit Red Wings, 6-3 in favor of the Pittsburgh Penguins. So with that being said, welcome Maple Leafs Nation. Welcome to Maple Leafs Post Recap. Thank you as always if you had joined us for the first Maple Leafs Post Recap, as this is now Game 3 of the 82 season, Game number 2 of our broadcast covering. And I'd also like to cordially invite those of the Pens Nation who are also listening probably later on Sports for Beginners, the podcast, as this is an On the Ice and Behind the Benches program. So welcome to those listeners as well. My name is Thomas, and of course, I am the host of On the Ice and Behind the Benches and a few other programs on Sports for Beginners. However, this program is called Maple Leaf Post Recap, which airs after the game gone final. And today's game topic is your team, Pittsburgh Penguins Nation, the Toronto Maple Leafs against the Pittsburgh Penguins. A quick overview of how the show is going to be run before we get into anything that we talk about. As you may have heard me talk on New Jersey Devils is Maple Leaf Post Recap. We will start the show with a period summary detailing the penalties and, of course, the goals scored by each team. We will also be detailing a little later in this program as we get into, after I've done the overview, we will be detailing the head coaches and, of course, the goaltenders in tonight's matchup. We'll be doing that a little bit shortly in the program, so we'll be doing that first. We've gone through the period summary, which also includes the game totals. Time permitting, we will also check in on the action that's going on in the NHL tonight. We will get a look at what is going on for both teams a little later in the program as we wrap up the program when we look at their next games. And we will also give out a dominant goalie performance of the game. We will even talk about the players of the game and rather the stars of the game as well. So that's what you can look forward to right now. Let's get you the head coaches and the starting goaltenders for the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Pittsburgh Penguins as we begin the period by period summary. Before we get into the period by period summary, though, and take our first break of the program, let's take you into the head coaches. I know we've mentioned them a little bit in the opening words, but head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins is Mike Sullivan. And the head coach for the Toronto Maple Leafs was Craig Berube. So those were the head coaches for both the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Pittsburgh Penguins. Head coaches out of the way, let's wrap up this portion and get right into the penalty summary by getting a look at our starting goaltenders and backups for both the Maple Leafs and the Penguins in Hockey Night in Canada's Toronto opener. Beginning with the Pittsburgh Penguins, as it would be number 30, Joel Blomqvist as the starter. He would be backed up by Tristan Jarry wearing number 35 as the backup. For the Toronto Maple Leafs, they would have a goaltender backing them up in number 35, Dennis Hildeby as the backup, with Anthony Stolaris, the starter for the game, wearing number 41. It would be number 41 and number 30 taking on each other in the first ever Hockey Night in Canada matchup between the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now keep in mind there was a lot of action that went down and some history was being made, including Gino Machino getting a record-setting year in points. So how did that work out for him? We'll find out more about that a little later on in the program. But before we leave for our first break in the action, let's remind you of the game time decision for both games as the Matthews and Crosby game of Hockey Night in Canada for the Maple Leafs and the Penguins. Scheduled time of puck drop was a 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. Pacific, and 12 midnight in the UK puck drop time in Toronto Scotiabank Arena, of course being the venue, which is just next door from the Rogers Centre, the home of the Toronto Blue Jays, and the CN Tower, alongside Ripley's Aquarium and, of course, the Toronto Convention Centre, where last year's, and only last year's, All-Star Game apparently took place for the 2024-2023 All-Star Game in Toronto. More conversations on why the All-Star Game is not happening this season on a later episode of On the Ice and Behind the Benches podcast. Let's take a break and get a word from our friends over at Voices for Ability Radio and our neighboring podcast, the Sports for Beginners podcast. As for Voices for Ability Radio, they're hosting a show that airs every Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, except on holidays, and that's Take Another Look. So we'll get a word from Voices for Ability Radio, all abilities, all the time, and a word from Sports for Beginners, and then come back with the period-by-period summary. You're listening to Maple Leafs Hockey on the Ice and Behind the Benches, and streaming later on Sports for Beginners. This is the Hockey Night in Canada edition of Maple Leafs and Penguins, and it continues right after this. Stay with us.
Take Another Look with Gerda Felix and Melanie Taddeo Malo. Two powerful women of diverse backgrounds having genuine, unique, and uncomfortable conversations that everyone needs to have. Join Melanie and Gerda for conversations about what is missing from human connections.
looking for sports content on the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Bills, and the Argos, as well as the Blue Jays and the Raptors during the NBA basketball season, the NFL, CFL football season, the baseball season in MLB, and the hockey season in the NHL, then you've come to the right place. Check out Sports for Beginners, the podcast, with me, Scott McGregor, where we talk about everything and anything in the world of sports media and around the teams, the Pittsburgh Penguins during hockey season, the Buffalo Bills and Toronto Argonauts during football season, the Toronto Blue Jays during baseball season, and the Raptors of Toronto, the Toronto Raptors, during basketball season. We've got you covered every week, but if you've got any questions or feedback, please send us an email at sportsforbeginnerspodcast8231 at gmail.com. Check us out on Facebook at https://www.facebook.com/sportsforbeginnerspodcast87. And to learn more about upcoming episodes and when they drop, please visit https://sportsforbeginners0.wordpress.com. Once again, that is https://sportsforbeginners0.wordpress.com. Catch you later, fans. The Pittsburgh Penguins go 6-3 victors over the Detroit Red Wings at Little Caesars Arena, and now they come to Toronto after Toronto comes off a 4-2 victory over the New Jersey Devils and Sheldon Keefe. This is Maple Leaf Post recap, and after those words that we thank our Sports for Beginners podcast and of course that Sean Pickard at Voices for Ability Radio, all abilities all the time portion of the show would be the night where we talk about the scorers and the penalty takers. In short, this is our period by period summary, and let's not waste any time and get things started with a power play goal from Pittsburgh Penguins getting us started in game number 1 of the 3 meetings between the Penguins and the Maple Leafs. We'll talk about when those other 2 meetings are a little later on in the program. It's a power play goal for PGH, and it comes off of Chris Letang, also assisted by Sidney Crosby and Gino Machino in Evgeny Malkin. Time of the goal was 10 minutes and 58 seconds. We had penalties in the first period from the Maple Leafs with Simon Benoit receiving a 2-minute minor for tripping. Time of the penalty 10 minutes and 4 seconds. So after 1 period of play, it would be Chris Letang's difference maker giving the Penguins a 1-0 lead into the first period of action. After the first 20 minutes, it's Penguins 1, Maple Leafs 0. Furlong says the Maple Leafs goal scorer in William Nylander, his first of the season for the Toronto Maple Leafs, gets the Maple Leafs on the board. It's now Maple Leafs 1, Penguins 1. We are tied at 1 goal apiece. William is assisted by Max Domi, and that would be a time of a goal in only 50 seconds. It only took them 50 seconds to get a power play goal, or rather a goal by the Maple Leafs on the board, and the Maple Leafs have knotted it up at 1 goal apiece. Speaking of tying the game up with William Nylander getting the Maple Leafs on the board to start the Maple Leafs opener against the Penguins, the very next goal for the Maple Leafs would be scored by Matthew Knies and be assisted by Mitch Marner and Morgan Riley at a time of 2 minutes and 53 seconds. Then some other penalties come into the second period as we look at the only penalty taken in the first period. That was Simon Benoit, 2 minute minor for tripping at 10 minutes and 4 seconds. Bobby McMahon receives a 2 minute minor for interference on goaltender interference. The time of the penalty was 4 minutes and 23 seconds. He would serve the penalty on goalkeeper interference. Time of his penalty would be 4 minutes and 23 seconds for a 2 minute minor interference on goalkeeper. Max Pacioretty would continue the penalty box for the Maple Leafs send bin and give us a 2 minute minor for a call that many people may be questioning right now, and that's a 2 minute minor for hooking. Time of the penalty was 14 minutes and 24 seconds. After a couple of penalties from the Maple Leafs, starting with Bobby McMahon and Max Pacioretty, Jack St. Ivany would get a 2 minute minor for interference. Time of that penalty would be 17 minutes and 23 seconds into the game. 17 minutes, 23 seconds. And then Brian Rust, the Rusty Razor, would also get a 2 minute minor for tripping. Time of the penalty, 19 minutes and 57 seconds. At this point, it's the Maple Leafs 2, the Penguins 1, going into 40 minutes intermission with the Maple Leafs 2, the Penguins 1 in the game. The Maple Leafs have the lead only by a goal. You wonder, what will happen in the third period for the Maple Leafs and the Pittsburgh Penguins? Let's see. Mitch Marner gets it started with his first goal of the season at a time of 2 minutes 12 seconds in the third period of regulation time period, and then a goal gets scored by Ricard Raquel just 12 minutes and 29 seconds after Mitch Marner gets the Maple Leafs a 3-goal lead, or rather a 2-goal lead, with a 3-1 Maple Leafs lead. Ricard Raquel's goal would ultimately be the deciding factor, making it back to a 1-goal contest at 12 minutes and 29 seconds. Before we get to the final goal scorer of the regulation time period, of course, this was kind of an empty net goal for the Toronto Maple Leafs to kind of seal the deal for the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Toronto Maple Leafs' game. Final penalty summary, including the only 2 penalties taken in the third period, were Simon Benoit, another Simon Benoit penalty just like he took in the first period, but this one would be a high sticking call, 2 minutes be the call, and 4 minutes and 44 seconds be the time of the penalty for Simon Benoit's second penalty of the game against the Penguins and the Maple Leafs. Just before we even get closer to the empty net goal, at 14 minutes and 26 seconds later, it's a hooking call on Marcus Pettersson for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Maple Leafs go on what will be a game decision penalty power play that could easily turn the tide in the Maple Leafs' favor, although it already is in the Maple Leafs' favor, but also could be the end of the Maple Leafs' lead, assuming it was a 1-goal contest going in to those power play minutes. We'll get to the power plays in just a little bit. After an unsuccessful power play for 3 straight chances for the Maple Leafs, at literally 19 minutes and 38 seconds, we get William Nylander putting the puck behind the Pittsburgh Penguins net for an empty net goal, and an assist comes on Max Domi, his 3rd assist of the season, 2nd of the night. Wouldn't you know it, it's William Nylander to seal the deal. It's William Nylander to start the deal against the Pittsburgh Penguins, and Max Domi, the same guy that was with him in the first period, is the same guy, the second period, is the same guy that finishes it off with William Nylander in the second and last period of play of action. So there you have it, Maple Leafs Nation and Pittsburgh Penguins Nation. The Penguins drop their second loss of the season. The Maple Leafs pick up their second W of the season. By the same score, they beat the New Jersey Devils in the road game against Sheldon Keefe quite a night ago on Thursday night. Let's cap off this period by period summary like we did with the New Jersey Devils with the game stats, and let's get you the need to know basics. Obviously, the goals speak for themselves. Maple Leafs 4, Pittsburgh 2. Pittsburgh spends at least 6 minutes in the box. Toronto spends at least 8 minutes in the box. Hey, not too bad for both penalty minutes for both penalty killers, but really the Maple Leafs power play, they have to work on it. They're 0 for 3 on tonight's contest. Meanwhile, the Pittsburgh Penguins are 1 for 4 on the power play, including the one power play by Chris Letang. Only power play goal the Maple Leafs would allow from the Pittsburgh Penguins. They would win 22 faceoffs compared to the Maple Leafs, who would win 25 faceoffs. This contest, they would hit the Pittsburgh Penguins 17 times, and the Maple Leafs would get hit by the Penguins, get this, 13 times. Speaking of 17s, they would block 17 of the Pittsburgh Penguins shots, while the Pittsburgh Penguins would block only 10 shots from the Maple Leafs, and they would try to win the shots battle, but the Maple Leafs won the shots battle as well. So not only did they win the game, but they definitely won every single battle you can think of, Maple Leafs Nation. They outshot the Pittsburgh Penguins 33 to 23. Ooh, boy, that's a tough pill to swallow for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Toronto Maple Leafs are probably loving that, finishing with a score of a 10-point shot lead. They beat the Pittsburgh Penguins by 10 shots. 10 shots on goal was all the Pittsburgh Penguins needed to tie in this Hockey Night in Canada game. Unfortunately, it was not in the cards, and therefore they fall the same score the Devils fell to the Maple Leafs 4-2 on Friday night, or rather Thursday night, because they didn't play Friday night. Right, time to get another breather in, and let's get a word from our friends over at Sienna T Radio, who are making our day brighter one song at a time. Maple Leafs hockey continues on the Ice and Behind the Benches, and streaming later on Sports for Beginners, the podcast, with the Penguins and the Maple Leafs. Right after this, we're going to talk about what's going on in the NHL, get our game stars of the game in, and see where the time takes us. Look at what's going on in the NHL and the stars of the game, plus the dominant goalie performance of the game, time permitting, and we get you looking at the Penguins and the Maple Leafs. It's time of action and when they will be playing. We'll get your time of action of when both teams are playing, and we'll get you a look at what their season series looks like and where are they headed since they played in Toronto tonight on Hockey Night in Canada. Right back with Maple Leafs post recap.
Hello? How are you, my friend? Why? What's the matter? Why feeling bored and lonely? Look! Look at me! I am always happy! The only reason? I can tell you, it's because I listen to Sienna T Radio. All the best shows you can think of. The Melting Pot, the Cosmopolitan Culture Club, and the Song Bank. There are also many more new shows to come. Please make sure to visit her website at http://siennat.wordpress.com/siennat-radio. can hear you more cheerful.
CNT Radio, making your day brighter, one song at a time.
Try kicking off your weekend and Saturdays this weekend with Nick Blazewitz in the Sienna-T Radio DJ booth from the Melting Pot in 11:30 to 12:30 Eastern Time on the East Coast, 10:30 to 11:30 Central Time, and 4:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. in the UK time. Once again, that's 10:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. on the Central Time Zone, and 11:30 to 12:30 p.m. on the East Coast, 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. on the UK time. Remember, listeners, the Sienna-T radio station is making our day brighter, one song at a time. Back to the program. The Maple Leafs 4-2 victors over the Pittsburgh Penguins. Welcome back into Maple Leaf Post recap on a Hockey Night edition in Hockey Night in Canada on Maple Leaf Post recap. I am Thomas, and this is Maple Leaf Post recap. We have gone through the period summary, including the penalty takers and the goal scorers of the game. Of course, the Penguins, losers in this game, and now it's time to figure out what's been going on in the NHL tonight on Saturday's Hockey Life editions. But as we get into those editions, we will be checking in on the ongoing games, and it should be noted, just to kick us off, that the game between the Lightning and the Hurricanes has been postponed and rescheduled at a later date. A later date will be finalized. They were supposed to play tonight. That game has been postponed and therefore will not be played, as it was supposed to go live at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Games that did go final were a shutout between the Dallas Stars and the New York Islanders, as the Dallas Stars shut down the New York Islanders 3-0. The Devils put on a show with the Washington Capitals, beating the Washington Capitals 5-3 in regulation. Speaking of 5-3, how about overtime against the Utah Hockey Club and the New York Rangers, as they fall to the Utah Hockey Club 6-5 in overtime? Speaking of overtime, the Seattle Kraken were forced into a shootout with the Minnesota Wild, but ended up coming out on top 5-4 against the Minnesota Wild on the road. Jordan Eberle being the shootout winner, or the shootout hero. Bruins would take on the Los Angeles Kings and take them down 2-1, with Trevor Moore getting the only goal for the Los Angeles Kings, Elias Lindholm and David Pastrnak getting the overtime victory. The Boston Bruins in this game. The Buffalo Sabres victories over the defending Stanley Cup champions, the Florida Panthers, 5-2, and of course that was an interesting matchup for those teams. The Ottawa Senators fall to the Montreal Canadiens 4-1, and the Detroit Red Wings take care of business against the Nashville Predators 3-0. Two shutouts to speak of on the Saturday night of hockey action, and we got some other games going on right now, as it is scoreless in the second intermission with the game with no score, and that's the Ducks and the Sharks. The Flyers are trailing the Flames by 1 goal as they are in the second period of action. Travis Konechny with the only Flyers goal. Mackenzie Weegar and Jonathan Huberdeau with the game's goals for the Flames. It's a 5-3 victory, Blue Jackets over the Avalanche right now, as they're into the final minutes of the 60-minute period in the regulation time period. Is 2:55 left to go with the whistle, and the Blue Jackets look like they're closing in on a victory. However, the Avalanche are only down by 2 goals, so they have a shot at doing this. The Blackhawks lead the Edmonton Oilers. They lead the Edmonton Oilers 3-1, and of course, in the second intermission, we have the Sharks and the Ducks with zeros on the board. We'll continue to keep track of the games. If we run out of time, we'll make a late check into the program of where those games are going on this Saturday night edition of Maple Leaf Post Recap, but we will see where everything is going. Right now, we're going to get into the stars of the game for the Maple Leafs and the Penguins. And we've got some other stats that we didn't reveal in the period summary, so we'll reveal them as we proceed to close out the show when we get to our time permitting dominant goalie performance of the game. So we'll see where that all takes us. The stars of the game for the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't know if it's any surprise to the Pittsburgh Penguins fans or the Toronto Maple Leaf fans, but it's Mitch Marner with 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points. Matthew Knies, a goal, no assist, 1 point, and 2 points, 2 goals. William Nylander. They are your first, second, and third stars of the game. For Pittsburgh Penguins, player of the game for me is none other than Rickard Rakell. I think he had an interesting night. Obviously, it wasn't in the cards to get a W, but you do what you can to get as many chances as you possibly can, and he tried his very best, and so did a lot of other guys. They tried their very best. They had like 2 shots on goal for him, and there was a lot of shots on goal for Lars Eller, but Eller just could not blank Anthony Stolares. Let's talk about Joe Blomqvist. Let's talk about Joe Blomqvist for a minute here, okay? 32 shots faced, 29 saves made. 3 of those 32 shots he faced were goals. They were all at even strength, because remember, he was pretty solid when it came to PPG goals allowed. He was pretty solid. And he was pretty solid when it came to shorthanded goals by the Maple Leafs. Nothing could get past him. At the end, though, the Maple Leafs do pick up this W, and the Penguins, unfortunately, they don't pick up the W. They pick up an L, and that's going to hurt the season, I'm sure. All right, on the other side, I'm going to talk about the dominant goalie performance of the game. But before we wrap up this program's portion of the player of the game, I'm going to give out one player that I actually think really stood out to the Toronto Maple Leafs organization in this game, and this game in particular, and that was, while he was trying very, very hard to do so, is Mr. 8 shots, and that's Austin Matthews, the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, the 26th captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs this year. And count them, 8 shots. He took 8 shots in this game and could not blank Joel Blomqvist. He blocked 2 shots and gave the puck away 3 times. You got to work on that, Matthews. You're having a bit of a down year, but I still have faith in you, man. I still have faith. I think you are just going through a rough patch. Austin Matthews is my player of the game despite his low efforts to get any goals. A little bit of a runner-up will definitely go to a guy that did get some goals here, and that's going to be a look at the guy I'm thinking of in Mitch Marner. He got a goal, got an assist, and he got 2 points, so that accounts for something. Well, let's give some credit to Anthony, who stopped 21 shots that he faced, allowed 2 goals, but also faced 23 shots by the Pittsburgh Penguins. So he made 21 saves. 2 of those 23 shots were goals. 2 of them were goals. One was an even strength goal, and one was a power play goal. He finishes the night with a save percentage of .913, and his opponent will finish the night with a save percentage of, let's see, he would finish tonight's game with a save percentage of 906, 0.906. Once again, that is actually .906 save percentage for him, and of course the save percentage for Stolares or Anthony would be a save percentage of 913. 913 for Anthony. Couple of days rest for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and a couple of days rest for the Maple Leafs post recap show, as they'll be back in action on Wednesday against the LA Kings. But we're going to dive right into the rest of that schedule in just a little bit when we tee up the Penguins and the Maple Leafs next games. But first, a 30-second timeout and a word from our friends over at Broadcast Map as we get you set for the next games for the Maple Leafs and the Pittsburgh Penguins. This is Maple Leafs post recap on the Ice and Behind the Benches, and streaming later on Sports for Beginners podcast whenever the Pittsburgh Penguins are playing the Toronto Maple Leafs. In 30 seconds with our dominant goalie performance of the game and time permitting another check-in on the NHL action tonight. Stick with us.
Looking for conversations on the world of broadcasting, sports media, and from time to time, my favorite sports teams? Listen to Broadcast Map with me, Ali Musa. To learn more about the show and to view the upcoming schedule, like the Broadcast Map Facebook page. Search Broadcast Map.
Bit of a somber night on Fifth Avenue with the Maple Leafs beating the Pittsburgh Penguins 4-2. The Maple Leafs is home opener in Toronto on this Hockey Night in Canada Saturday. Of course, is now looking at the end of the program. Have heard our dominant goalie performance of the game introduction just as we were returning, and now it's time to make good on that promise and deliver the dominant goalie performance of the game. And whether you like it or not, I mean, Anthony was great and all, but you gotta give credit where credit is due. And I just think while they lost this game, you gotta give credit where credit is due. I mean, Joe Blomqvist, 32 shots faced, 29 saves, 3 goals allowed, 3 of them were even strength goals. Hey, this guy was solid, man. This guy was solid on the PPG, and whenever there was a chance they were on shorthanded, or the Maple Leafs were shorthanded and they were on the PPG, they were able to come out and say, hold on, we have a way of making sure Joe Blomqvist can block these shots from the Toronto Maple Leafs, and that's pretty good enough for a dominant goalie performance of the game. Now, Anthony, you were good, man. You were solid, man. You were awesome, but you do have some stuff that I did kind of understand was coming, and I don't know where things were going. Yes, you only allowed 2 goals, but I don't know. I just think if you had made, I don't know, say 22 saves or rather 30 saves, maybe there would have been more of a chance for a dominant goalie performance in the game. But nonetheless, both goaltenders, I think, were really, really good. Tonight's contest that we're looking at on Maple Leafs Post recap, and we're gonna get into a final look at the shots on goals tallies just to see where we got to where we were on the shots on goal tally. We didn't do it in the game stats of the period summary, but we're gonna do it in this point, and it looks like this. We got the Maple Leafs taking down the Penguins 10-6 in the first period. So that basically means the Penguins, while they scored 6 and the Maple Leafs had like 10 shots, they were only down like 4 shots in the first period. So they weren't out of it by a long shot. And then they scored 10 shots in the second period, while the Maple Leafs scored 13 shots. then the Maple Leafs scored 10 shots in the third period, and now it's kind of where they're out of it because the Penguins can only score 7 shots on goal, and that be the game where the Penguins lose 23-33 in the shots on goal total, but they do lose the game 4-2 in favor of the Maple Leafs. Let's take one final check in on the action going on right now, and of course, in the intermission as we speak, it's the 3-2 Flames over the Philadelphia Flyers. Travis Konecny with a Flyers goal. Joel Farby with his first of the season for the Philadelphia Flyers, and that's the second goal that's been scored by the Philadelphia Flyers. So it is in the action of conversation. It is the Flames 2, the Flames 3, the Flyers. Well, the Flyers are now down by 1 goal again. It is 3-2, the Philadelphia Flyers, with Joel Farby and Travis Konecny only goal scorers for the team so far in the game. That looks like it's in their favor. And speaking of in their favor, it looks like we're getting Edmonton responding to the Colorado Rockies. The Chicago Blackhawks, as they lead now by 2 goals to the Edmonton Oilers. Leon Draisaitl, his first of the game, and the PPG for EDM as the short form for the Edmonton Oilers, as they are down 2 goals. It's 4-2. The Anaheim Ducks have got on the board, and the Sharks are down 1 goal in the third period of action. All right, time for my final thoughts on the program and time to shut down the program for another edition of Maple Leafs Post Recap. As always, I love talking Maple Leafs with all of you who love the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I love talking Pittsburgh Penguins hockey with all of you as well. Before I get to the final thoughts, though, New York Rangers fans, I started this program and tried to get it out last season and try to do the games, but I'm going to be doing select Rangers games, and that's all going to start on October 14th when the Maple Leafs are not playing, and it's going to continue every time the Maple Leafs are not playing, but the Rangers are playing, and sometimes the Maple Leafs will be playing the Rangers. This show is going to be specifically for the New York Rangers fan base, as only the New York Rangers fan base can handle. We will be covering the games that the New York Rangers are playing, and the next game, which being the first game that we'll start off with, will be the home game against the Red Wings, which will be a 7 p.m. start time, 6 p.m. Central Time start time, 4 p.m. Pacific, and of course, 12 midnight start, the UK. It does look like that game is going to get started at 7 p.m. as the Detroit Tigers, for some baseball news that has broken out today, lose to the Cleveland Guardians. Their season is completely done for the postseason. The Guardians will go on to face the New York Yankees, 7-3 Guardians in favor of the Cleveland Guardians, as they eliminate the Detroit Tigers in the American League Division Series matchup. So now they're on the American League Championship Series against the New York Yankees, and the Dodgers are on the way to the National League Championship Series with the New York Mets. Who's winning the World Series? We'll find out when we do some baseball check-ins a little later on in the program. Perhaps we're going to do some off-season check-ins as we do those throughout this program, but not tonight. No, tonight we're going to get my final thoughts of the Maple Leafs and the Penguins game, and we're going to look at the attendance record right now before I get ready to sign off on another edition of Maple Leafs Post Recap. And here we go. Here is an attendance record at Scotiabank Arena. The Maple Leafs winning it 4-2 over the Pittsburgh Penguins, with G. Herbert and Dan O'Rourke as the referees. This record of attendance was 18,934 fans in attendance. Again, the goaltenders for both teams were Joel Blomqvist and Anthony S. for the Maple Leafs, Joel Blomqvist for the Penguins. All right, Leafs Nation. All right, Penguins Nation. If I could describe this game to you in one word, or rather two words, I would say that this game was pretty entertaining, and I would also say that it was pretty interesting because at one point I kind of figured, why am I thinking it's gonna go to overtime? It did not go to overtime, but I was thinking that way, and I probably shouldn't have been thinking that way, but I digress. I digress. With this being said, my question that I'm going to leave with you for this one is going to be in regards to the team that the Maple Leafs beat, because the Maple Leafs aren't back in action until they face the LA Kings Wednesday night. It is Pittsburgh Penguins fans and Maple Leaf fans who can answer this question as well. This is the question I want to leave you with. With the Penguins falling to the Toronto Maple Leafs 4-2 tonight and picking up a W against the Red Wings at Little Caesars Arena. Question basically is, where do you think the Pittsburgh Penguins will be when the Maple Leafs and the Penguins next meet? And that meeting between the Penguins and the Maple Leafs will be at PPG Paints Arena on December 1st. Excuse me, that meeting will be in PPG Paints Arena on December 7th, 2024 at 7 p.m. So the question I want to leave you with is, where do you think the records for the Maple Leafs and the Penguins will be when they next meet in December 7th, 2024, when they host the Maple Leafs in PPG Paints Arena? Reminder, it wraps up in PPG Paints Arena in March of the 2nd, 2025. Will we be covering that on Maple Leaf Post Recap? You know we might be doing that, but we'll see where the games take us. The PWHL is also back in action, but that's a story for another time on the PWHL Recap. And actually, starting next Tuesday, I'm actually gonna put out some PWHL content for my second season of On the Ice and Behind the Bench podcast. So I hope you join us for that. But with that being said, that is it for this one. Thank you very much for listening to the program. Click on the comment section if you have any comments or concerns or maybe thoughts you want to bring up for Maple Leaf Post Recap. It really helps the show out as we are just getting started. Again, shout out to Steve Dangle for helping us through the 2024-2023 season when we did Leaf Reaction in place of Maple Leafs post game. We really couldn't have done it without you, Steve Dangle. Keep up those LFRs and keep up the good work with your Steve Dangle podcast. I look forward to seeing more of the great works that I can find on YouTube and rather listen to on my favorite podcast feeds. And I hope you check out Steve Dangle's LFRs for yourself. And with that being said, my name is Thomas. Have a great weekend, everyone, and have a happy Canadian Thanksgiving to all of those who celebrate Canadian Thanksgiving. As always, Leafs Nation, as the Maple Leafs beat the Penguins 4-2, I always like to leave the show and say, go Leafs go. I will see you when the Kings and the Maple Leafs are done playing their action on Wednesday night. See you then. Maple Leafs post recap on the ice and behind the benches, and we'll be back on December 7th, 2024 with Maple Leafs and Penguins on both Sports for Beginners and on the ice and behind the benches, the podcast. Now let's eavesdrop on the Scotiabank Arena, and from outside the Maple Leaf Post recap show, my name is Thomas. Have a great week, everyone, and go Leafs go. Hey everyone, your host of On the Ice and Behind the Benches, Thomas McGregor here, and I just wanted to say thank you for tuning in to an edition of Toronto Maple Leafs Hockey, Maple Leafs Post Recap with me, your host, Thomas McGregor, and I hope you will join us the rest of the way for the season, as we will try and cover as many Maple Leaf hockey games as we possibly can this season, regarding that it is an 82-game season. Our goal is to see if we can get not 82, but at least up to 81 hockey games this season. And if possible, get on the road to Lord Stanley's Cup with our Maple Leafs in the Toronto Maple Leafs. So with all that being said, if you like what you listen to, leave comments if you have anything you want to say about the show. Maybe you thought there was something we missed in the game. Maybe there was something that you want us to look at Perhaps you want to get us game day ready for the next game ahead of the game and then return to the post show after this. Also, like the On the Ice and Behind the Benches podcast Facebook page by searching On the Ice and Behind the Benches the podcast. Until the next time we meet on Maple Leaf Post Show, stay tuned and go Leafs go. Thank you so much for joining us today on Sports for Beginners, right here on the Ice and Behind the Benches. Remember to catch our host, Scott McGregor, on Sports for Beginners every Friday for your weekly dose of sports conversations. Until next time on the Ice and Behind the Benches for Sports for Beginners, we'll see you then. Looking for a good hockey podcast that covers your favorite hockey teams and mine? Check out On the Ice and Behind the Benches, where we chat about our favorite hockey teams from puck drop to the last play of the action. To learn more, follow the On the Ice and Behind the Benches Facebook page, search On the Ice and Behind the Benches.